This is so much fun because ICP targeting and ABM strategies are always something that I had theorized about as a marketer. My background is completely in marketing, but since joining Accelant as an account strategist, it's something I actually get to put into play with my clients every single day. So hopefully that this will help make ABM and ICP targeting a little bit more attainable when you're breaking it down into some different steps and then actually being able to execute on that. So the other kind of fun thing about this is that, we've rolled this out for several clients, but just before this webinar, I was walking through a sales team who will be leveraging this starting next Tuesday is our launch day for that. So something kind of fun about that. All right, and then please ask some questions, throw them in the chat as we go through this. I'll address them as I see them, and then we'll definitely get to more Q&A towards the end as well. Okay, so the purpose and the opportunity really comes down to funnel volume and funnel health. So, volume is important. We want to put a lot into the top and then watch how it converts through the funnel to ultimately to customer. Of course, there's an expansion motion there, but really talking about this net new leads to your system. And funnel health. So it's one thing to dump a bunch of stuff into the top of funnel and hope that it starts working by running different campaigns. But when you get a really healthy funnel going, you've got truly targeted and ICP specific kinds of leads in there. They're actually qualified before you start to reach out to them to further qualify them. McKinsey, has data to back this up too. So personalized messaging generates a lot more ROI than when you just keep it really generic. And then that in turn lifts sales as well. But you can really personalize not just by pulling in personalization tokens, but by truly tailoring the message to exactly, the industry or the person or the persona or the job title. We'll get into all that. But, the data shows that is really a way to be more successful. But there's a challenge that I'm sure many of you run into every day. So a lot of the times there's target misalignment. So marketing wants to go after one, ideal customer profile where sales wants to go after another one. Maybe the business intelligence shows, the definition as one thing, but marketing and the positioning team, have a different definition of it. So there's, we're not always fully aligned cross-functionally of who truly is our ideal customer profile and what those definitions include. And then, of course, resource constraints as well. So whether that's people or budget or the number of leads or the number of salespeople to follow up with your leads, there's always resource constraints in place. So some of the strategies that I'm going to show today try to alleviate that as well. And system fragmentation. So if your teams are working in different tools or they're not connected well, that's definitely going to lead to some, frustrations and challenges as you try to roll this out. So we'll be talking about how we do this mostly in HubSpot, but this can span into different tools as well. So the solution, we're going to prioritize ICPs. We're going to truly align the strategy of who we're going after, and we're going to apply a nurturing and a qualification approach to specific ICPs within your ideal network of people. We're going to automate the engagement. So we're going to automate what makes sense and then have sales just step in for, tailored outreach when it's actually appropriate in order to reduce the constraint on resources. And then truly aligning the handoff too. So once all the different teams are aligned, then we, the handoff is a lot smoother and it goes a lot better. So that way, any friction between marketing and sales, should be streamlined after you've gone through these different exercises. Okay, so step one is to truly define your strategy. So there's a framework involved in this before you even get started in HubSpot. So these are some of the things that you need to think about. So when it comes to overall market strategy, these are the 4 different stages that I tend to walk clients through and that I've applied myself when I've led marketing teams in the past. And the same thing can apply to micro campaigns as well, like one of these ICP targeting campaigns. So step 1 is to identify. First, you identify who you're going to go after. How many people are there? What do the industries include? Are there revenue targets that you want to be reaching out to? All of those different aspects, to truly identify what you're going to do, who you're going to address. Step 2 is to prepare. So this is actually writing all the content that you need to share out to those people that you've identified. It's also about preparing your sales team and the sales collateral that you need for when those leads do show up. So that way they're not scrambling. I need a case study for this, or do we have a blog post on that? Because we have different industries coming in that we're not prepared for. That eliminates that burden. Step 3 is to execute. So this is actually running your campaigns, running your ads, going to the trade shows, running your webinars, whatever it is, to actually execute on the campaigns that you've planned for in the previous 2 steps. And then number 4, of course, is optimization. So now that things are running, let's see what's working, what's not. As marketers, there's lots of different levers that you can pull to really amplify the message, to tailor your messaging, to tweak who you're reaching out to or through what channels and different things like that. So we're going to go into each of these steps individually as well. So when you are identifying, and you're truly identifying your ideal customer profile and defining what that means, there's one thing to identify the personas, and that is, that's more of the subjective information. So maybe this is how much experience they have. This is what they care about when it comes to what they buy and how the decision-making process goes. These are some of the pain points. That's all persona targeting. This is all about the ideal customer profile. So this is establishing your criteria. So industry, company size, pain points, some of the struggles that they go up against, the tech stack that they're using, their organizational structure, the titles that you're going to go after, all of those specific criteria that you can actually capture in HubSpot and in data points, whether you're asking it through a form, or you're pulling in from a data enrichment database, or you're using HubSpot, Breeze enrichment criteria. You want to think about the actual data points that go into your ideal customer profile. And then you have to align. So marketing and sales needs to actually align on these definitions. So that way you're working off of the same framework and you understand completely why you're going after the different ideal customer profiles in the way that you are. And then you actually have to go and identify the targets. So now that we have the criteria, we've aligned on it internally. Now, how are we going to go find these people? Are we going to go in through the database because we got a bunch of leads that no one's touched in 3 years? We want to sift through that and look and identify the ones that we want to start going after. Do we need a database like ZoomInfo or 6sense or something like that, where we're going to pull in net new ones? Or are we going to run ads against these different kinds of audiences in order to generate some net new leads? So some of these best practices I've kind of, previewed in the previous one, but what we're going to do is we're going to enhance and clean our database. So you can use, the AI tools and smart CRM properties to fill these things in. They just took away the Breeze credit requirement too, to enrich your current data, which I'm obsessed with. That was one of the very first things I did after I saw that went live. So I noticed that it works really well on industry, revenue size, keywords, description, the company LinkedIn page. It fills all of those in at a pretty high rate that is really accurate too. So you can definitely fill in some of your gaps by using Breeze Intelligence. And then you can also segment your existing database too. So now you can chop up your database into all different kinds of segments. So you say, who's in my construction industry? Who's in my FinServe? Who's in my education, whatever industries you want to look at. And then you can, further target things down too. So you can set some of the really big companies to target accounts, or you can use markets in the data management tool. That's in beta, but it's still new and something worth taking a look at. And you can also look at different target markets within your the buyer intent tool, all within HubSpot. There's so many different tools that you can use to leverage your existing database and apply these ICP frameworks against them. Also, you can use a third-party tool. So ZoomInfo, 6sense, that's where you can source cold leads and bring them in to start to warm them up. But those ones have those, specific filters that you can use, that you can apply your ICP targets to, and then you can find those companies and contacts that fit that ICP. Okay, so step 2 is to prepare. So we want to define the messaging and define your content strategy. So this is where the mapping your personas comes in, because this is how you can truly tailor your messaging, not just to your industry and to your ICP, but to what really matters to the individual who will be consuming your content. So these are motivating factors and pain points, and then developing the solution that your product or service, has for these pain points for your ideal customer profile. And then you develop the messaging. Are you writing short form blog posts or long form blog posts? You need to stand up a new services page on your website or a new product catalog and product, pages that you can share out through the different ways that you're doing that. Maybe that will be new infographics or, the imagery that goes along with your new content, all those different pieces. And then you actually go and you create your content. So you can prioritize things and use what you have. A lot of the time you can actually recycle or upcycle really the content that you already have. You might just need to modify it a little bit more to speak specifically to your different ideal customer profiles or your personas. Some of the best tools within HubSpot, I hope you're all using them because it works really great. But the brand voice in the branding section of the settings is awesome for making sure that the voice is consistent across AI tools. Content remix, of course, is helpful too. So, you put your longer form content in at the top, and then you can make all different kinds of content that spit out the bottom. And then Breeze Assistant too. So that can definitely help you write things as well. What I tell my clients all the time too, I'm sure a lot of you have experience with Breeze at this point, but what I absolutely love about it is that it actually just learns from your portal. So the more information you give it, the more it will understand and give you fully contextual, kinds of content as it's reading things out for you. It doesn't just go out on the internet like ChatGPT or another kind of tool, which are really great and helpful tools for their own way too. But when you're working with inside of HubSpot and using their LLM, it's pulling directly from your portal and your information so it stays on topic. Okay, and then you have to also prepare by defining your life cycle stages. So if this isn't something that you've revisited for a while, this is definitely worth revisiting. Make sure that you've got each of these life cycle stages truly defined. So what does it mean to be a lead? What does it mean to be an MQL versus an MQL? If you combine those two into just a qualified lead step, that's totally fine too. But you have to understand what the stage gate is to get from lead to qualified lead to opportunity and then to customer. So leveraging a lot of native automation and native functionality is the best way to use this, but where it doesn't really come into play is lead to one of these qualified lead steps. Those tend to be something that you actually have to build an automation for based on your definitions. And then you can align these stages to intent. So what I like to do a lot of, and we'll get into it, is I like to say that if they're a lead, that means that they're qualified through the ICP. They have the right industry, they have the right title, they're part of a company that's the right size. But then I update them to MQL once they've showed enough engagement. And then once they start showing engagement with sales after they've been passed through to that, that's when we update them to, an SQL, sales qualified lead. And then, of course, the native definition that I agree with completely for opportunity and customer has everything to do with if the company or contact is associated to a deal. So when that deal is created, they're now an opportunity. And when that deal goes to closed won, they're a customer. So aligning these and truly identifying and defining your stages and then also sharing it out throughout your organization is a really critical part of this prepare step within this framework. So this is what this kind of looks like when you're mapping out your customer journey. So I like to add the stage in here for prospect. The original is subscriber, which is at the very top of the funnel. I like to change that to prospect in my own builds because I just think that that's a more accurate word for at least most of the clients that I work with rather than subscriber. So, totally cold new person to your database, whether you source them through a third-party tool or you haven't touched them in a really long time, they're basically a cold lead, which is a prospect. Once you apply the fit score, we'll get into how to set that up if you haven't used that yet. But once you apply the fit score, which is essentially filtering down to those ideal customer profile data attributes that we've defined, that's when if they are a good fit, you can set them to lead. So now they're actually a qualified lead at that point. We can enroll them in a nurture workflow. And once the engagement score gets applied as they start to engage with marketing content and marketing emails, when there's enough engagement, we can set them to an MQL and get them over to sales. So mapping out the different stages aligned to the different campaigns you're going to run is how you can really align your funnel, and then sharing this out so that every team that touches these leads or that's reporting on these leads understands the journey, and the life cycle stage definitions is really critical.
Laura, we had a question,
Yeah.
or really kind of a note around sometimes the quality of contacts and companies coming from Zoom info. Can you
Yeah.
just address really quickly how that prospect to lead, that initial fit scoring can help kind of like remedy some of those pain points?
Yes. I could not agree more, because I have been somebody who uses Zoom Info and other similar tools for a long time. And I totally agree, because you can pull like the most specific filters into your filters in that tool. But then when you export it, you still are getting stuff that just doesn't apply. And you're like, where did this even come from? Why is this on my list? So that's why I really like to put them through like a double check. So that's what that fit score is. So well, I think we'll get into like the way that we can build that in a minute. But the idea is that, you're putting industries or NCIS and what is it? NAICS codes or whatever it is into Zoom Info to be able to pull the right kinds of industries, but sometimes they don't actually apply in the way that you hope for them to. Or titles in particular is another one that I find is a little funny sometimes when you plug in, the filters into one of those systems. So applying a fit score in HubSpot kind of double checks that. So when we ran this for one of our clients recently, they started with a very small list just to get this tested, but they actually ingested about 320 leads into the system, but only 280 of them had a high enough fit score in order to send them through the engagement work or the nurture workflow that we had set out for them. So I think that that's a good thing. Sometimes people say, well, we paid for this many leads, but they're not good. But what's the use if they're not any good? Then we're going to be spending resources on trying to warm up leads that aren't truly a fit. So I think it's really important to have that double check. So hopefully that answered your question. Happy to go more into it if you have a follow-up. All right, cool. So now let's see how we build this in HubSpot. So this is absolutely part of the execute part, since we've kind of come off the whiteboards now, or the documentation planning of this phase, and we're building things in HubSpot. So step one is this fit score. So most common filters we see are industry, company size, location, annual revenue, tech stack. If you're a regional, location makes a lot of sense. So there's all different kinds of things you can use in this, and they all have to do with data points that are in your database. So whether you're filling in the gaps in your data using Breeze or from an enrichment tool like Zoom Info, using these actual data points can get you to where you need to go using this fit score. What I also like to do is rank things when it's important. So this is what I just rolled out for the client literally this morning. Was we set our industries to that, to 50 points. We just had, 50% of the fit score had to do with industry, because that was the most important part. And then we have different title groups moving down from that. So this is a financial services client. So we had, leadership within the financial team got the most amount of points for when it came to title. So the CFO, the chief accounting officer, VPs of accounting, those all got the most points. But the next step down from that would be people that are close to that financial leadership role. So we did the CEO and the COO and the CTO. Those kind of leaderships got, 40 points instead of 50 points. And then we also gave, the next section down, people in the financial department, but not leaders in the department, got, 35 points instead of 50 like the leadership did. So you can kind of tier these, and then you can say that they are a high threshold of the tier within your fit score, but they don't have 100 points. They have, 80 points. So you can kind of use some different kinds of techniques when you're building out these different fit scores. All right. And then you're going to execute on this. So we have a whole other webinar that we can share out to if you'd like to, but then you can route these people to nurture workflows. So these are, engagement driven, marketing emails that get sent out to the people who are actually qualified, at least by an ICP level. So the emails that should be sent out in this nurture workflow are educational. The CTA shouldn't be to book a meeting with sales. It should be, read more about the way that we solve the problem for a client like you, or, these are the most common things that they face, that this industry faces, and these are some solutions to that. So, or this is some industry news that may pertain to this particular industry or something like that. So once they have a high enough threshold on their fit score, you can update their life cycle stage from prospect to lead and get them into this nurture workflow to start warming them up and getting them used to your brand. So this is that webinar that I was referring to where we got into the details of this. And the way that I really like to have this is I like to send out 3 emails. Again, fully educational. We're not looking to book a meeting with sales at this point. We're just trying to get them warmed up and get your brand in front of your ICP. So what I like to do here is send 3 different emails that are educational, and then it stops and it looks at the engagement from those past 3 emails. If they did not open any of those 3 emails, I like to send exactly the same emails again, but with a different subject line, hopefully to entice them to open my email this time. What's great about this is that you can recycle the content that you wrote without writing net new content. All you need to do is ask Breeze to write you a new subject line that also looks at your previous open data to write you really good subject lines that are more likely to open. And but you can reuse all the content in the email since it hasn't been read before. If they did open those emails, any of those previous 3 emails, you get emails 4, 5, and 6, and so on. And then, of course, you can use smart content to really tailor these emails by industry, or you can do A/B testing to make sure that you're regularly testing to get the best outcome in this. But you can just keep it super simple and send out, some static emails too, as long as they are personalized to your ICP fit. Okay, cool. And then as they're going through this nurture workflow, this marketing driven, engagement is all you're looking for in here. Throughout that workflow, you have an engagement score set up too. So some people like to combine the fit score and engagement score, but I see a lot of value in having 2 separate scores. One for the fit that you run them through to make sure that they are qualified enough to go into your nurture workflow. And then you have a second one that's looking for engagement based on your nurture workflow. So, there's a lot of different filters you can use in this. When we're using that nurture workflow sequence that I just showed you, I tend to narrow it down to just the activities within that nurture workflow. But outside of that, you can measure engagement across all different kinds of campaigns. So we can look at intent signals, we can look at email opens and clicks. CTA clicks can get a little bit more specific when it comes to email clicks or website clicks, anything like that. Page views, form submissions, webinar engagement, chatbot interactions is really good too. And then, of course, meetings booked would, bring your engagement score all the way up to the top. Or if they fill out a get a demo button, form or contact us form, those are super highly engaged people. So you want to make sure that you weight those interactions with a lot of points. So then that's when you would need this kind of workflow following that. So as they're in the nurture workflow, they're gathering those engagement, points on the engagement score. And once it gets to a high enough threshold, that's when you'll want to pull them out of that nurture workflow. They've had enough of that and get them over to sales. So at this point, that means that you've got a marketing qualified lead if you're using that kind of step in your framework, and you want to enroll them in a sequence. So you can get them over to sales. They're highly engaged. It's fresh engagement too. Get them over to sales as quickly as possible so that they can, get on that effort. What I like about using the engagement score too, rather than just saying they've clicked on an email, sales go call them, it's a little less creepy too, because it's not like they opened one email, and because one email open or one email click does not necessarily mean that they are ready for sales engagement. It just means that they're starting to get familiar with your brand. So once they reach a high enough threshold on the engagement score, that's when you can start to get sales involved. Okay, so when you're getting sales involved, this is kind of a good way to do this. So I love these new dynamic sequences in HubSpot. I think that they're so cool because you can continue the automation that you've been, using. Everything that we've talked about, once you've set it up, is kind of on autopilot. All you have to do is fill in new leads from the top of the funnel and just let the rest of it really take hold there. So dynamic sequences is similar. So once you set those automated emails through sales, it's a totally different experience for the person who's receiving the emails. It's one-to-one. It's directly from a person. It just comes to their inbox. It's unformatted, as opposed to the marketing emails that are, educational and pretty formatted, and they've got images and buttons and things like that. So you can send them, just some one-to-one sales emails through automation as well. And then as they start to engage with those emails, that's when it gets converted over to the rep-led engagement. So that's that second side of the dynamic sequences. If you haven't taken a look at that yet, it's really pretty cool how that works. So that's when you start to send LinkedIn requests and manual emails, so they're a little bit more tailored, and you can make phone calls and things like that. So again, one of the goals of this is to reduce the burden on resources using dynamic sequences, and only having a real salesperson actually step in and start making these manual steps is great for when the person is fully engaged with marketing and then sales emails. Okay, and then how do we measure this? So this is actually the client that I was talking about. This is an old dashboard at this point, but we've got 360 people came in from the enrichment tool, and then I think it was 280. This one's, what is it? This one, it's shifted now that people are starting to engage. So we've got 213 marketing qualified leads. Those are the ones that have been engaging with the nurture sequence, and then the leads are the ones that have not engaged yet. So if you combine that, I think that works out to be the way that it needs to be, or something like that. I'm sorry, I can't remember the specifics right now. It's been a couple months of this one. But the idea is that you can measure a lot of different things by using this framework. So you can watch people convert through your funnel. You can watch your email metrics change over time. You can watch your fit score and engagement scores go up and down over time too. And then you can make all different kinds of changes, based on the results too. So you can say, if your prospect to lead, meaning that check of the people that I've brought in from ZoomInfo who have successfully made it through my ICP double check, if that conversion rate is really low, it means you have to change things on your filters in your engagement tool. If no one's really converting through your nurture workflow, it's time to change up the messaging on that. Maybe make the emails more frequent or less frequent. There's lots of things you can test in order to get people from lead to MQL. If no one's converting from MQL to SQL, then that means sales isn't picking up where they need to be. And if you don't see a high conversion rate or an increasing conversion rate between SQL and opportunity, that means that sales messaging might be off or not quite tailored the way that they need it to be. So checking each step of these funnel, conversion points is where you can figure out what might be going on. And then you get to that step 4 to truly optimize what you're doing while you're doing that. Great. And there you go. That's it. So